Yeah. Except for Richard's note taker. Oops.
Who's that?
That's an AI.
Yeah.
We don't want that, but we can get rid of them. Or just decline. It's just some weird Zoom.
No, I think is that Richard? Is that
Yeah,
your
it's mine.
AI?
It's just connected to my.
Okay.
It's just connected to my phone.
Okay.
Some get rejected, some doesn't.
We don't have any
Okay.
corporate spies in.
Great.
No, yeah.
Hello, everybody.
First react.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear? Yeah.
Yep.
Paul, can we hear you to make sure your microphone works? Can you just try to come off mute, just testing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what it does.
That's Dan.
There you go. Let me know when you're ready.
At the same time. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, here you go.
All right,
I'll do it.
welcome everyone. Good to get together again after not being able to get together last month. Before we get started, I would like to introduce a special guest tonight. Commander Hayden from the United States Coast Guard is here to share in what we're doing, learn more about us, and hopefully we'll get into a discussion. So thank you, Commander, for coming. Right. I am going to call the meeting to order. Today is May 14th, 2025. So thank you for joining the Hudson 7 Drinking Water Council at our monthly meeting. My name is Gary Bassett. I'm also the mayor of Village of Rhinebeck and chair of the Hudson 7. Our Hudson 7 hybrid meetings are live streamed on Hudson 7's YouTube channel. The public is advised to subscribe to this channel. Our in-person meetings occur here at the Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Plant located at 70 Waterworks Road, Poughkeepsie, New York. Public comment is allowed both in person and remotely. Please visit our website to learn how you can provide public comment by visiting www.hudson7.org and visit the meeting page. All right, so we're going to do roll call. We do have a quorum, but I'm going to start here on my right.
Rebecca Martin, Source Water Protection Coordinator for the Hudson 7.
Richard is.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I'm Commander Brandon Aiton. I'm the response department head at Coast Guard Sector, New York.
Richard is still City of Poughkeepsie.
Hello, Nick Butler, Town of Sopus, Support You and Water Superintendent.
Devin Rigolino, I'm Dutchess County's Environmental Program Director and Vice Chair of the Council.
Eric Whiteside representing Town of Hyde Park.
Randy Alstead, Technical Advisor for Hudson 7, Administrator of Water Poughkeepsie Water Treatment Plant for another 2 weeks.
Stop it in.
Donnie DeNovoli, Laboratory Director here at Poughkeepsie Water Plant, and I'm a Technical Director.
Thank you. And on the screen, I'm going to start in my right top left-hand corner with Shannon.
Shannon Roback, Science Director at Riverkeeper and Technical Advisor to the Hudson 7.
Paul.
Paul Melrose, Technical Engineering Advisor for the Hudson 7.
And we have New York State DEC, Brian.
Brian Duffy, I'm the section chief for the monitoring and assessment section in DEC's Division of Water in Albany.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie June. I am a research scientist and the Bureau Director of the Bureau of Water Assessment and Management with DEC's Division of Water.
Great to have you both. Ryan.
Good evening, Ryan Sharp, Dutchess County Town Board Town of Poughkeepsie, Ward 5. Good evening.
Good evening. And Mike.
My name is Mike Forging. I am the Drinking Water Source Protection Program Technical Assistance Provider through the Department of Health.
Thank you. I believe that's
Dan.
Dan. Dan on phone.
Hi, Dan Shapley with Riverkeeper, Technical Advisor to the Council, and I'll be with you in person in a few minutes.
I didn't. Okay, so let's keep moving here. We have a lot of good stuff to cover. Did we have minutes from us?
Yeah.
2 months
Well,
ago?
2 months ago.
2 months ago?
March.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from March 12th. Second. Devin, thank you. Jonathan, finish this and we'll get to you back. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? We just got done with that.
Good day, I'm Jonathan Turns, Executive Director for the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, do you have the Elizabeth's report?
We do. So the treasurer's report, total outgoing funds for the month, $6,250 for the coordinator role, April 2025 B. Total incoming funds, $5,000 from the town of Poughkeepsie, 2025 dues, which was received and deposited on May 13th, 2025. Amount of interest accrued for the month is unknown, bank statement not yet received. Cash in bank, $50,840.33. Estimated total to be spent through December 31, $50,350. Estimated fund balance as of December 31, 2025, $490. Respectfully submitted, Elizabeth Spenzia,
All right,
treasurer.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as submitted. Do I have a second? Thank you, Devin. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. You're up.
So there's two source water protection coordinator reports since we didn't meet last month, March and April, that I submitted. Do you have any questions? Any questions?
Nobody questions what you do. I don't
Nobody does.
understand that. Yeah. Okay.
So communications.
Right.
There's a series of communications, PFAS and wastewater and biosolids. Presentation by CDM Smith. PDH training that Paul attended and so did I. Slides are here. The link is here to review. Randy Altstadt was honored by New York State AWWA for service to the water profession.
Congratulations, Randy.
Yeah. We followed up. There's a lot of photos and things on the website, social media. The Daily Catch Red Hook wastewater plant and Sawkill contamination concerns, a link to that report. Hi, Ann. You can grab a chair and come up. We launched the Hudson 7 campaigns and key actions for 2020-2024 report. It's up on our website. We got an article, Upstate Road Salt Could Threaten New York City Water in 80 Years. Ulster County Water Quality Coordinating Committee met in April 14th. There's a meeting recap and an agenda for everybody to follow along. There was a diesel spill in the Rondell Creek. And a final update, thanks to Riverkeeper, Shannon and Sebastian for testing the water. The DEC, Kelly Turturro, stated that the DEC received a report of the spill in Kingston on Wednesday, April 16th. The DEC responder observed an area of emulsified diesel fuel under a dock. Kingston Fire Department deployed a boom. DEC returned to the site on April 17th with a contractor and has been maintaining the boom. The source wasn't identified, or at least I don't think that it has. Since we received this communication, there's no evidence that it reached the Hudson River. But Nick was contacted by the DEC, and Riverkeeper did a series of tests of hydrocarbons. It did a hydrocarbon analysis. And maybe you both want to say something in one moment. That we learned through this process that the chain of command, chain of communications, it seemed as though that the Hudson 7 drinking water operators were actually the last to receive notice. And that's something that maybe we can work on in the future with the DEC. Nick, I don't know if you have anything you want to say, or Shannon.
Trying to remember that particular afternoon, but I think it was close to noon time or maybe 1300 or so where I got the call. I was in Danielle's office actually, and I just thought it was rather strange that it was just kind of a nonchalant call, and I had asked very basic series of questions. Who, what, where, when, why, and how, and there wasn't very many answers, which was fine. So I turned my plan off. I had my guys shut down, just go outside and take a look at the raw water for just any time to go oil, and then had them look inside the filters. And then we got more information on it the following day after that, after I report. Okay.
Good.
I can
Shannon?
just, yeah, I'll just report that we submitted the sample to a commercial lab for hydrocarbons analysis. We used EPA method 524.2, TCE, DCE, benzene, bromomethane, all of these, toluene. And everything came back non-detect. We collected 2 samples. We collected one from the sort of like boomed area, and then we collected one from a stormwater pipe that looked like it could have been, kind of this, not the source, but where that was coming from, and both of them were non-detect for everything in method 524.2, hydrocarbon method. So yeah, it's a little confusing if the thinking is that it was diesel fuel, because that should have showed up. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a link here in the communications that goes to our files that have photographs from the different locations if you'd like, so it's on record. Drug Watch, there was a report that was sent to us from Drug Watch, a PFAS health effects overview that I linked. Federal legislation, there's a bipartisan water infrastructure resilience and security bills for municipalities to review. And there is a resolution here, request for the Hudson 7 to pass a resolution in support of the Packaging Reduction Act, which is a ban on, well, not a ban, it's a bill to reduce single-use plastics that are in our landfills and incinerated, et cetera, end up in all the chemicals in our drinking water. And there's the sample resolution as well as an FAQ. And a request for the Hudson 7 to consider sending the resolution to the state in support. It's Senator Hartbaum is the Senate sponsor, and Assembly Member Glick, both are the chairs of the environmental conservation committees. And there's a lot of support, statewide support. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but that's the end of the
I
communication.
think every municipality should have received it as well. I don't know. We did.
At our
It came
last
into our climate.
DAC meeting, I brought it up and I recommended that our board representative, Mark, I asked him to present it to the board for the town to support it.
Devin, do you know if the county came through with one?
It's been raised with the county.
Okay.
Ulster County did.
Yeah, I know we did. I think it's getting traffic.
Does the Hudson 7 want to pass a resolution in support?
I would be in favor of that. I mean, there are some things about it that are controversial, but why not reduce plastic? There's no downside to reducing, especially with the rubber.
Thanks. I agree. I also would be in support, even though
It says that you have to appoint a inspector general, so you're adding administrative staff to enforce the regulations. So that's harsh. But aside from that, it's gives money to the municipalities to offset the costs of recycling. And it's to try to get more plastics out of the waste stream and recycling.
Right, 30%
Sounding good.
over 10 years. That body is in place because it sounds like the DEC may or may not have the capacity to oversee that bill, as far as I understand. It's in that big queue, but that's my understanding.
What's that?
That the independent body that's doing
The inspector
the
general.
inspector general and the oversight is because the state is potentially doesn't have the capacity.
Yeah, I mean, if
to do
you
that.
want to do it right, you have to have somebody watching. So I understand that, but that's controversial.
Yeah.
And staff to enforce it. Otherwise, I didn't see anything that.
we have not, as a village ordinance, we have not passed them. We're still sitting on it.
Well, session ends in 3 weeks. so.
Yeah.
You
I
do
mean,
it.
if somebody wants, is there a volunteer to want to take the lead and bring it back? I mean, to push it forward. We can make a motion to approve it retroactively if we can circulate it around. But look for a volunteer to take a lead. We want to. Having none, we're gonna pass.
Upcoming meetings and events, there's a workshop preparing for coastal flooding with the Stevens Flood Advisory System. Upcoming on May 21st. And then there's a CAG meeting, the PCB's Community Advisory Group. That Dottie and Randy serve on behalf of the Hudson Seven. That's in person. I don't think you can make
I'm
it.
not able to make that, but I am going to the flood advisory.
Great. And I saw you communicated with the consultant, so that's great.
I'm
That's
gonna
it.
try to go up there too.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm gonna
good.
do that. So it's the same token, yeah.
Great.
It's the 25th, if I can run, I'll go.
Yep, June 25th.
It'll be me on the 2nd of June. So, let's go.
That's it.
More time.
I think I'll be fine going forward.
All right. Well, thank you. So I'm gonna open up the public comment. Do we have anybody?
None, but Amanda Laval just joined us, I noticed.
Yes, oh, hi.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. No comment in particular, but nice to see everyone.
You too.
Okay, we're gonna go on to our first presentation for the evening, or presentation. Stephanie,
Brian will have the floor.
is it Brian?
Yeah. Thank you. I actually did bring in Brian because he does directly manage the programs and has a much larger background information to share with you. So I will let Brian get his screen set up. And I know the request was for the information about the sites that were proposed by the Hudson Seven. But Brian has pulled a few other research projects that we've been undertaking that we thought would be of interest to you in the Hudson watershed as well. So I will let Brian take it over.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, we did pull a few extra projects and some more data to review. So I think we might exceed the 15-minute slot that we talked about or I saw in the emails just by a little bit, by a few minutes. So I'll try to do my best not to go too much over. But thank you all guys for inviting us. And as Stephanie said, that the monitoring assessment section oversees our surface water monitoring program. So it kind of made sense for me to come in and talk about the results and some of the projects that we've been working on for the last several years in not only the Hudson River, but the basin itself. So we'll talk about a handful of projects. Let me see, make sure we moving forward here. All right, everybody can you see my screen okay? I want to make sure it's advancing.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I think some of this, some of you may have heard, but some of the monitoring program background, I want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page in terms of the programs and the design and where some of these projects and these data are coming from in the context of our statewide monitoring program for rivers and streams. But within that, the four things that I'll be talking about are probabilistic monitoring that we've been doing in the basin now for several years. I'll be focusing on the 2022 results, but probabilistic monitoring is a real useful tool for us statewide, and I wanted to just quickly touch on the results and why this approach is useful for us, not only in the Hudson but across the state. We'll be talking about the Hudson 7 site request from 2022 as well, and then a really cool effort on 50 years of biomonitoring in the Hudson and Mohawk River. So the entire Hudson River from up through the Troy Dam and then above into the upper Hudson River, as well as the Mohawk. And looking at 50 years of water quality or bug invertebrate information on those river systems. And then lastly, our Lower Hudson River water quality monitoring project that we've been implementing with the USGS over the past couple of years. So those are the four things that I'll be talking about today. Starting with, like I said, the background. So our primary objectives of our monitoring programs are comprehensive assessment of the 305B and 303D lists every other year. So 305B, that's our all water. 303D is our list of impaired waters. But also we have several secondary objectives, and those are identifying and analyzing temporal and spatial trends, characterizing natural background conditions, reference condition or least disturbed kind of conditions in our basins across the state, And then supporting data needs of other department programs and external interests. And that's where that Hudson 7 request falls. Every year we reach out to the regions and to local interests to try to solicit feedback on where we should focus our water quality monitoring efforts and what's important from the folks in the region and the boots on the ground to try to get meaningful water quality data out there. Our cycle is a 5-year cycle. We call it the rotating integrated basin studies. For anyone who's heard of that, RIBS cycle, 5 years, 17 screening basins that we cover over that 5-year cycle. In the lower Hudson River, we were there in 2022. We'll be back again, as you'll see in this figure, in 2027, looking at, as I said, trends, reference sites, new locations, and regional and external interests. We also conduct special studies, which are some of the other projects that we'll be talking about, as well as probability-based surveys. Historically, since around 2008, we were doing those probability surveys more focused on the basin. Now we've shifted to support that 305B effort across the state. So we're doing more of a statewide perspective on probability monitoring. Won't touch much on that, but that's one small shift that has happened in the last couple of years. When we're out sampling, we collect a lot of water chemistry. So when we're out doing a screening, as we did in 2022 in the lower Hudson Basin, we're looking at nutrients, total metals, chloride, dissolved organic carbon, things like that. From time to time, when we collect water quality data for special studies and different research applications, we might add other things to that list as needed. Emerging contaminants, PCBs, legacy pollutants, things like that, depending on what the need is, what the data need is for whatever project it is we're working on. In situ chemistry we'll do, that's anything that can be collected with a probe essentially out in real time. Typically we're talking about dissolved oxygen, temperature, pH, conductivity, things like that. And then the macroinvertebrate community, that's really been our bread and butter for the Rivers and Streams Monitoring Program for the past 50 years. Collecting information on the macroinvertebrate community and generating what we call BAP scores. And then sort of in support of that, physical habitat characteristics for our sampling locations to go along with the invertebrate community. Because some of the results that I'll be focusing on include a lot of those invertebrate community samples and results, I just wanted to touch briefly on the methodologies that we commonly employ. Most of what we do comes from what we call the traveling kick sample that you see on the left here. That's a 5-minute, 5-meter sample of a hard bottom riffle area of a stream. You kind of kick the substrate, the rubble and rocks and gravel, dislodge the organisms and their wash downstream into your kick net. That's about 90% of what we collect probably on a yearly basis. The other one we still use, but was historically much more employed across the state, is the multiplate sampling method. So we developed that back in the early 70s. That's an artificial substrate, or Hester dendy, as it's commonly referred to more broadly, and it's colonized by invertebrates in larger non-wadable streams over the course of a 5-week deployment during the summertime. We usually put them out from sometime in mid-July to mid-August. So those are the two main methodologies I'll be talking about today. From that information, we take all of that invertebrate community information, the genus and species, the enumeration, the number of those organisms, and generate a series of community metrics into what we call the biological assessment profile score, or an IBI as it's more generally referred. So we calculate those community metrics, things like species richness, tolerance of the community, tolerance to organic enrichment, or tolerance to phosphorus, and a couple of different metrics, normalize them on a 10 scale and take the average of those to calculate our BAP score. The 10 scale is broken up into 4 impact categories that you see here: the non-impacted, greater than 7.5, slight impacts 5 to 7.5, moderately impacted, BAP score is 2.5 to 5, and then anything less than 2.5 would be considered severely impacted. We, really the important threshold here from an impact assessment perspective is a BAP score of 5. So that's sort of the number to pay attention to. Anything above that would be considered attaining our aquatic life use goals. Anything below that would be biologically impacted. So first thing I wanted to get into, as I mentioned, was the probabilistic results. So just as a reminder, when we go out and collect probabilistic data, in this case, I'll be presenting it in the context of the lower Hudson Basin. We are typically collecting water quality information, as I mentioned earlier, things like nutrients, total metals, chloride, DOC, in situ chemistry, macrobiota community data, and the physical habitat characteristics. So we can use the probabilistic monitoring approach for all of these different parameters. I'm just going to present the biology for the sake of brevity today, but again, this approach is useful because you can characterize broad geographic area as a basin or a state with a relatively simple subset of the data. So it's what probabilistic monitoring is taking a subset of that broader population. In this case, we're talking about stream river miles across the state. And you can answer questions like what percentage of those stream river miles support healthy ecological communities. So this figure on the right really just kind of shows what we're doing. We're taking, this is the whole population. You can't really ever sample the entire population, every stream or river mile, but we're statistically selecting sites at random that are representative of that larger population so that we can make statistical statements on the results and apply them more broadly to that basin or to the entire state. So what we have boiled down very simply is on the left here a pie chart of the biological assessment profile scores of the lower Hudson Basin compared to the statewide distribution on the right. So about 28% of our stream miles in 2022 were found to be non-impacted, 45 slightly impacted, about 27 moderately impacted, and we didn't have any severely impacted sites in that probabilistic data set in that season. And I put for context the statewide distribution on the right, and generally speaking, they're very similar with the exception of perhaps a few more percent in that slightly impacted category statewide. And I think really, it's probably due to the difference in population density and land use across the lower Hudson Valley. I think it's pretty well known that the lower Hudson Valley is fairly densely populated, urban populations, urban areas, and as well as agriculture, things like that, contrasted with upstate New York in the Adirondacks and places like that to tend to be a little bit more pristine. And our results really reflect that. So moving on, the 2022 request from the Hudson 7. So there's 19 sites that were requested as part of that solicitation across the basin. For this, again, same thing. This was a screening effort, so the same parameters apply that I touched on previously. And this is, again, those sites represented as BAP scores on a map from north to south. Of the 19, from a biological perspective at least, we were only able to sample and generate BAP scores for 15 of them. And the 4 locations are shown in the lower right that we weren't able to generate BAP scores. 2 of them were what we would consider low gradient, and we don't have appropriate methodologies finalized yet to calculate BAP scores on low gradient locations. These are sites that just don't match the habitat profile of where we want to do a kick sample, so we can't generate a valid BAP score yet. And one site was dry, and one site we had no access. So those points that are showing on the map as little purple dots are those locations that we weren't able to generate BAP scores. The rest of them are color-coded according to our BAP chart here. So for the most part, our sampling locations, as requested by the Hudson 7, were in that non or slight impact category. And then, of course, as you can see, there's a couple that are in that moderately and one in severely impacted condition. And I did look a little closer at some of them just to see what kind of area and land use there were. And this sampling location that jumps out as being severely impacted looked like it flowed through a densely settled neighborhood and perhaps had some underground flow that typically is not good or conducive to a very diverse ecological community. So I haven't looked real closely into the rest of the sites, but that was one that I did look into just to get a little bit more background on. And that's what I found with that location. As I said, there's a lot of other parameters that go along with this site list as well. I chose one in situ parameter, pH, to kind of look at from the same perspective. We still have the BAP score color code represented on the left, but now on the right we have our pH units. The line on the left is our lower water quality standard of 6.5, and then the upper bound is 8.5 for pH. So we want our pH scores to be, or pH values to be within 6.5 to 8.5. And you can see all of the locations that we were able to sample had pH generally within the range that we'd like to see. One location was sort of flirting with that upper bound, but it did happen at the Roloff Jansen kill, which is where that location had the highest pH result, was a non-impacted and one of our most at least biologically diverse and healthy looking ecological communities. And all of this data now and has been available through our DOW, or Division of Water Monitoring data portal. That's our QR code. So if you want to take a screen grab that. It's also accessible if you just go to our monitoring webpage, and we have a link to our monitoring portal. It's actually been recently redesigned for anyone who visited it previously. It was redesigned and went online about 2 or 3 months ago. And in my opinion, it's much more user-friendly and easily accessible to the average person looking for water quality data. Very, easily use filters and so forth, and easy to download the information and do whatever it is that you'd like to do with it. And then the last thing I think just to follow up was, what do we do, with the results that we saw, and what kind of follow up might there be? So one thing that we can do, and as I noted earlier, we're coming back to the basin in 2027. There'll be follow up, or potential follow up and call for input again in 27. And then there's always the potential for revisits, right? And what do we do with the information? What are we going to do with the information once we, collect it, and what kind of restoration, or what's the use of the information that we're trying to generate? So I think that's the question that we really need to be exploring a little bit further, and taking that next step with regards to these sites. Okay, keeping on moving, the Hudson River 50-year multiplate study. So just as a reminder, we're talking about not only the lower Hudson River here, main stem, but the upper Hudson River above Troy Dam, and then the Mohawk River as well, out to about Rome, where it becomes more wadeable. And this is really focused on in situ chemistry, but primarily on the macroinvertebrate community. So generating in water quality, or BAP scores, I should say, throughout the lower, upper, and Mohawk rivers. And the objectives of this were to, one, evaluate the current biological integrity of the Hudson and Mohawk rivers. But I think what's more interesting, to me at least, is to compare the communities we have today in 2023 or a few years ago anyways at this point, to communities that were collected 50 years ago. So I mentioned the multiplate methodology earlier has been one of our most long used methodologies, developed in the early 70s. This is Bob Bodie, Carl Simpson, and Larry Abley, who are sort of our biological monitoring forefathers, developed these methods, and we're fortunate to have a rich historical data set, and still be using those same methodologies to look at long-term trends in water bodies like the Hudson and other large non-wadable rivers across the state. This is the section in 2023, so we've grown for sure over the past 50 years. But it's also an opportunity, I think, to appreciate how far we've come in terms of restoration and protection over the past 50 years since the Clean Water Act. So I think that's part of this effort. So in the early 70s, that biomonitoring unit that I showed previously really focused heavily on monitoring the large rivers across the state. So this is one of the river systems that they were monitoring, but they were still doing that same type of rotation that we have today across the state, but with focus on the large wadable or large non-wadable rivers. Definitely more spatially intense than we implemented in 2023, but we were really trying to replicate that and make that comparison to just take a glimpse in 2023 versus 72, 73, 50 years of improvement, hopefully, is what we were expecting to see. And just appreciate, right, that there's water quality issues that are emerging continuously, but that we have made tremendous progress since the early 70s in the Clean Water Act. And This is a very simple representation of the biological assessment profile scores, those BAP scores, from the Mohawk on the left, the upper Hudson in the middle, the lower Hudson on the right, in the 1970s in green compared to the 2023 sample in blue. So you can see on the Mohawk River, definitely a substantial improvement from the 70s compared to more current. Upper Hudson, similar, tremendous improvement, and then improvement on the lower Hudson below Troy Dam, but maybe not as substantial as of an improvement. And I think probably, again, as I talked about earlier, the land use and the watersheds that are draining the upper Hudson and the Mohawk are more pristine. We have more point non-point sources affecting the lower Hudson. Perhaps some other issues. When in this case, we're talking about the invertebrate community, so they're subject to habitat disturbance, which is a big one. Part of why they're such useful indicators for us is they're not only responsive to water quality, they're responsive to habitat and things like that. So the lower Hudson River does have issues or situations related to the tidal influence up flows that go both ways in a river. We have large shipping or shipping or large ships up and down the river causing potential disturbance. We actually hang these oftentimes off of channel buoys, and they have a tendency at times to get hung up on them, and we do our best to mitigate that as much as possible, but there can be disturbance to the collections themselves. So definitely something to look into, but all in all, I think we're seeing tremendous improvement in the last 50 years, as you'd expect. So what we're seeing, recovery since the Clean Water Act, and I think, opportunity to appreciate the culmination of collaborative and collective efforts from the community, local and state levels. And I probably should have put federal in here as well. I think we need to appreciate the Clean Water Act and what EPA did for us as well in the Clean Water Act. But of course, as always, there's opportunity for further improvement. And then the last effort that I wanted to touch on was the Hudson River Assessment Project, done in collaboration with the USGS. They helped us to implement this. This was a massive logistical effort that we couldn't have done without the USGS. So over a couple of years, they did a tremendous amount of monitoring for us. Just a quick reminder for this effort, we're talking about water chemistry primarily. This is one of what we would consider a special study. Total dissolved metals, so water quality standards pertaining to both the drinking water, best use, and aquatic life, depending on the segmentation and the classification of the lower Hudson River segments. Nutrients, chloride, minerals, dissolved organic carbon, but we also added in PCBs to support our fish consumption advisory, and to generate the water quality to support that, and of course in situ chemistry. So a lot of parameters collected as part of this effort. The objectives of it were, one, to update the assessment ultimately of the 5 lower Hudson River estuary segments. These are the 5 segments shown on the right. And then I think it's important to note that the other component of that was to pilot the use of a stratified random sampling design that's representative of a river like this, because this is really a system that's sort of uncommon, right, across New York State, and we don't have a strategy or an approach necessarily defined for assessing the condition of these segments. So we used what we call the stratified random design. Each one of these points on the figure on the right represents a transect, kind of like what you see here in this little pop-out, a transect of 10 potential sampling points. So each time out, we generated a random selection of a point on that transect and sampled that in order to get enough samples to kind of represent the condition of the river. So 4 events annually sampled from summers 2023 to 2024, 27 total transects. These are about every 5 miles on the river through these 5 segments. And that equated to about 250 plus sampling data points throughout the 2-year survey. And where we sit now, completed sampling, as I mentioned, in 2024. USGS we're looking to them to provide a data summary report. They will be making all that data publicly available through their NWIS or National Water Quality Information System. And then, as I mentioned, also we need to, once we have this information finalized, it's still in the final stages of review and quality assurance, so we don't have a final data set yet, is ultimately going to be to evaluate how do you take all of that information throughout the Hudson River. Some of these segments have over 50 data points on them. How do you aggregate all that information into a representative condition assessment for our best uses on these segments? So that's the big question. And as I mentioned, the results coming soon. Unfortunately, we don't have these back, but we're working with USGS to complete that over the next several months, hopefully. And that's it for the 4 projects. So I guess we could take questions now or.
Do I have a question?
Thank you.
Good, thanks. Great. My question is, the lower Hudson is not as good as anywhere else, right? And so how does that relate to the impact on our water quality for our drinking water plants?
Can you hear that, Brian? And Stephanie, that question?
So Brian, my question was, the lower Hudson did not improve as much over the last 50 years as the others.
Yeah.
And the impact area, there was one right here in Poughkeepsie, which was a red area. And so overall, our concern is the drinking water. And I'm not sure how to take this and relate it to the quality of drinking water and what we should plan for.
I think the one thing to just be careful we don't confuse the results of the biological condition with water quality, because as I mentioned, I should have emphasized that bugs, are an important indicator of water quality, but they also are influenced by things like habitat. So we don't have the water quality data yet back. It's certainly going to be a concern. That's why we are conducting the assessment of the river, to understand the condition of these segments. And I think that will help us to answer better what we need to be doing to protect it once we have the water quality data, because the biological data is one element of that, and they're reflective of the water quality for sure. But I think that we'll get a more complete picture of water quality once we have that data set back from USGS and can start to look at the constituents that are in the water. And then, certainly, like you're saying, right, protecting the drinking water supply and understanding what the conditions are from a water quality perspective across these segments. And this red color here, I just want to make sure that red just happens to be the color we're using to represent that segment in this figure. It's not necessarily in poor condition. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
But Dan, what other useful way that the data may be useful? I mean, and just if it wasn't clear, when the Hudson 7 requested that EDC take those additional sample points, it was because a lot of the tributaries to this part of the Hudson had not been assessed by EDC at all, or in some number of years. So we're saying that what's the status? So this kind of gives us a first look at what the status is. But I think if we think about the drinking water source protection plan, one of the goals there is for the Hudson 7 communities to be, exemplary watershed stewards for our portion of the river. And so this gives some indication of which streams are in good shape and maybe need some, maybe protection is the goal, right? Buffers along streams, things like that. Whereas maybe some that are showing signs that they're impacted need more investigation or some restoration activity. So it starts to maybe give some better, overview indications of, the Falk Hill needs some restoration, which we probably already knew, so it runs right through the city of Poughkeepsie. We know it's got impacts. There have been other data that show, point in this direction, but maybe we didn't know about the Indian Hill, I think is that Yellow Dot, or, some of the others. So it hopefully can, be the start to deepening our understanding of those ways, I would think.
That's great. Shannon has a minute.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering, in terms of the water quality sampling and the data, can you share, I guess it's probably difficult to share like a list of the contaminants that you are monitoring. So I guess maybe the better question would be, how does that list of contaminants compare to like the Safe Drinking Water Act MCLs that the drinking water treatment plants have to comply with and, you know, conduct their own monitoring at the end of pipe? Did you kind of look at those in deciding what you were going to monitor in the source water, or how did you decide that? And what, is there a list or somewhere we can see everything you'll be measuring?
I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer that exactly, Shannon, but based on, so we have a couple different parameter lists that we use depending on what type of monitoring effort we're undertaking. The screening, right, is by design meant to be a little bit more simple approach. Like Dan was saying, it's a first step in understanding and getting data on streams like these tributaries in the vicinity of Poughkeepsie. And it's, you know, it's a simpler, you know, meant to be a more rapid sampling effort, right? We're looking at total fractions, generally speaking. A lot of the total fractions, actually, I think total fractions pertain to the drinking water protection best use. Not that all of these are Class A waters, but then the other effort that I touched on was that Hudson River assessment effort, and those parameters are meant to be inclusive of multiple best uses of the river system. So we have different river classifications. It ranges. I mean, go back to that slide from. I think so. We have Class C up here in the north end, Class A, B, and SB. So a range of conditions. We collected a suite of parameters that cover, you know, the drinking water best use that are applicable, have applicable water quality standards. So we're talking about water quality standards, not MCLs necessarily. So we're assessing based on the standards, and then, you know, I think the next step perhaps could be to compare to drinking water. And I think that from a drinking water source protection perspective, it helps to contextualize what you're dealing with from an MCL perspective. And I mean, I would hope address treatment, you know, understand treatment needs of intakes and things like that. It's a starting point anyways, because we're talking about ambient conditions. But that's how our parameter lists are sort of developed, and they're broad and not, we're collecting the same parameters across all of these segments regardless of the use, but we should cover all of many of the standards and best uses throughout the Lower Hudson segments.
Brian, if I could just add
Yep.
one additional thing. So the parameter suite might be similar across the different segments and that are classified from anywhere from A to C, but the actual value that is associated with that parameter's water quality standard might vary based on the different classifications. So depending on what use we're looking to protect, we derive it using different methods. So if we're deriving a water quality standard for drinking water best use, that will have different methodologies and endpoints that we look at versus a water quality standard that's derived to be protective of recreational purposes. So it's not one-to-one with MCLs and the Safe Drinking Water Act necessarily, but it is derived to be protective of those uses following conventional treatment.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Brian. We're going to move on, okay? All right, so discussion time. Commander Ayton, thank you again for coming. I was hoping you could maybe give us a 5-minute update on what's happening and get all the floor for discussions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for being such gracious hosts here. Honored to be here today. So a little bit of I'm going to be kind of careful with we swing out a lot of jargon. I know in the military in general, but on the Coast Guard, but want to maybe give a little background on kind of the sector New York and what is a sector, but maybe even take a step back in the Coast Guard in general, and why I think we have a lot of shared interests from your letter that sent in March. So the Coast Guard, dates back all the way from the days of Alexander Hamilton. Not going to, with the time we have available, not going to go into its full history, but shaped with a lot of different agencies and organizations over the years. resulting in what exists today and being responsible for 11 statutory missions, ranging from, domestic ice breaking, which you may have seen our vessels along the Hudson in the wintertime, to marine environmental protection. So that's I'm probably going to focus on that statutory mission because I think that has a lot of relevance. Though I would also say our national security or security it also plays an important role, especially when we deal with drinking water and how that may be used in certain purposes. So, Coast Guard, I heard some great mentions of some statutory laws that we also follow with the Clean Water Act. I'm going to take a little bit earlier from that, the establishment of the government's National Contingency Program or National Contingency Plan. It's not necessarily a plan per se. This is a spill actually happened in England in around 1968 called the Torrey Canyon. And the federal government at the time wanted to just form a blueprint with how we would respond to oil spills or really just these types of issues. And over the years, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, mentioned the Clean Water Act, also had, Superfund sites were added, hazardous waste, and then also the Oil Pollution Act of 1990 kind of transformed this, what we would refer to as the NCP, the National Contingency Plan. And it delineates the different types of zones and authorities and jurisdictions of who you may see responding or coordinating the federal government's response to oil spills and hazardous substance releases. So the Coast Guard is actually responsible. We are the federal on-scene coordinator for the coastal zone, and the Environmental Protection Agency is the federal on-scene coordinator for the inland zone. And these two zones are delineated in what we call our area contingency plan. So there's a whole presentation that we can kind of provide. We refer to it as the ACP a lot, but it is a plan that is covers everything from the geographic area to the amount of capability, oil spill removal organizations that we have within our area contingency plan. And so all these are based off of certain areas, usually centered around Coast Guard and Captain Port zones. So us being Sector New York, there's about 30, I think 35 of them now, or 37 of the sectors throughout the United States, and also Hawaii and Guam and Alaska. But when we mention this, that's kind of where we kind of try to establish these ACPs as being the coastal zone federal on-scene coordinator, and also usually have our state agencies and local agencies represented on these what are called area committees. So wanted to provide a little bit of that background just to kind of understand what kind of why we're so interested and why we have I think a lot of enthusiasm to really start working together on a lot of the challenges that were presented. I'll start first with our area contingency plan is under I will call it a revitalization project. It's actually a construct of, I would say, traditional plans or plans of the past range from 500 to 700 pages long. Not sometimes beneficial plans for responders to quickly reference in times of emergency, because you want basically something that you can rip out and know how to deal with an oil spill or a hazardous substance release. So the Office of Marine Environmental Response Policy, that's a Coast Guard headquarter office, pushed out guidance by and I believe we're tracking to the end of the calendar year 2026 to have all of our input complete at that point, but have a very I would call it streamlined plan that includes information that can range from geographic response strategies. We refer to them as GRSs, something that I'd say is going to be one of the central items that I think that we can work together along with Riverkeeper. I know some of my staff have been chatting with Neil about getting out on the Riverkeeper patrol, and they're very excited for that because, as you can imagine, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these geographic response strategies that we would like to evolve. And what I mean by the evolution is sometimes they're just planned, but we want to actually test and validate these strategies. And that includes, actually putting out the type of curtain boom or marine protection boom and seeing how long that type of evolution may take, because especially in a river environment where the currents move fast, oil spills, they can spread very quickly. So it's important that you have all those comms and the strategies well ahead of time. And then there was other I know some various other topics that within the letter that I think we'll be interested in and that can be addressed within the area contingency plan. I actually was observing not this closest rail track, but across the river looked to be look maybe a CSX or maybe some sort of freight train, and so things like that would want to be drawn in as risks or threats that we would have to consider when we're developing kind of the types of contingencies and plans. And
second, while you're on that subject, the bridges associated with freight trains are very much of a concern for us, because I know we've had several issues of CSX and ignoring bridges, which are a central threat with all of the hazards that they're carrying. Would you factor that into any of your responses as well, or are you just focusing on the fact that there's freight floating up and down all the road?
I think it's a that's you're referring like bridges that across the go across the Hudson River.
They know bridges that come in crossing streams that are
crossing streams,
because if there's a spill, if the train has a spill due to a defective bridge, it is going to impact the river.
It's yes, certainly bridge issues or issues with infrastructure are items that are addressed in the types of threats or considerations that we may. It would have to, if you said if cross kind of streams, it would just something that we would have to work with EPA on, is just make sure that, again, if it's the inland or coastal zone we're talking here on that topic. But I know any bridge
you
that
can put pressure on CSX if we find something. That's the bottom line. Put the pressure on them to fix the damn thing.
And I think one of the benefits of both the area committee that I was speaking with is it draws together. It has a power of convening, and also can bring in industry and to talk about these types of issues. So I think there's something to look at, because we're all and this have a shared interest to be best environmental stewards we can be and really protect the environment and the public, because we don't know what types of threats may be on.
Sorry to interrupt.
Get another one. Oh, no problem. I'm trying to just to address just some of the topics that and really wanted to focus on the area committee and the area contingency plan. And I'll probably, there's a lot more I can get into on that topic, but I see that as probably one of the central, and there will have to be, because there's a next meeting will be in June, and because of our location, we rotate, between New Jersey, the city, and then up kind of in the Hudson Valley area. So the next one will be in the Hudson Valley area. We do stream them though via Teams, and I will ensure that once the date and the location and time is settled, to extend an invite. I'll say that there's subcommittees, and that is where I think a lot of the work or the actions are going to be maybe of most interest to you. And there's one specifically that's being developed that is actually going to be centered on like geographic response strategies. And but there's others that also involve, oil spill removal organizations that that maybe located in different area, but they have a certain amount of expertise that sometimes they can provide to local fire departments. That may not be, that may be the nearest asset that might be needed to deploy. So those are the types of issues that we want to really start to dig in on. I was kind of considering just the lay of as I was kind of observing with the presentation. There is I know there was a question that was introduced about the basically like liability or issues if a discharge did occur. Who pays for it and how those circumstances. I think we can do a very streamlined 15 and 20-minute presentation at a upcoming meeting if you'd be interested in that. There's it's part of all the I know I'm covering a lot of stuff fast here, but they're part of the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. One of the things that many people may not be aware of is that I also established the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund, which is administered by the National Pollution Fund Center, which is actually located at Coast Guard headquarters. It's a upwards of around a 8.5, or it might be even larger, $1 billion fund. And it's a trust fund that is meant principally to deal with oil spill responses and that are what they would call like Oil Pollution Act of 1990 oils or open-ended oils, and also compensate for any types of damages that may occur due to the oil spills. So that is there's a lot to kind of the claim process that you all may be interested in, and how that might should the unfortunate event happen, at least you would have that information. And I'll always put a plug in the back of my business card. There's a entity called the National Response Center. It's a 24-hour pollution reporting called a hotline. It's manned by our marine science technicians in the Coast Guard and also personnel. It's a shared with the EPA is actually the chair of the national response team and kind of oversee it, but we host that at Coast Guard headquarters as well. And what's beneficial about the calling the National Response Center and that number is they have basically they do a multiple local agencies, fire departments. They would notify like the state, like DEC, the Coast Guard, EPA, their local region would be notified of whatever spill that is being reported to that area. And they can add names to, they usually have these catch lists of different agencies and people that request to be added, whether I've seen in some areas where municipalities will be added or people that may have an interest depending on the location of where that spill may occur. So it's a quick way to get information out to multiple entities. I guess alternatively with offer that presentation, we could look to do a one-on-one with the area contingency plan as well. I would there's a lot to the topic, so that would be one that I would I just want to be respectful of your time, and I know I'm going a bit over on all of your time right now on that, but I just don't want I want to make sure to do it justice as far as presentation.
We'd love to have you back.
Yes, I would love to come back, and I've been at the sector for coming up on a year now, so I know with military personnel, you always maybe see different people in uniform over time, but I will be there for several more years ahead. And a lot of my background is in marine environmental response. Throughout my career, I was at the policy office that I previously mentioned, and I just came from the budget formulation office, and there I worked a lot with the National Pollution Fund Center, so very familiar with a lot of these say policies and programs that would be of, I think, a great interest to Hudson 7.
Any other quick questions for the commander?
Are you familiar with the exercise that was conducted by the Coast Guard here in about 2023?
Just for response, tabletop.
It was actually out on the river. It was done up north of Kingston.
Was that the one in Albany?
No, it was right near here.
Right here,
Just here? Okay. I was, I can probably read up on that. When I reported actually the next week, they did an exercise in Albany that I did.
This was down here.
It was down here, okay.
Yeah, it was just north of Kingston, around Kingston. I keep giving you give me a card. I
No,
can
absolutely.
the information, but that was a really good exercise. It was, the Coast Guard was here and there were companies that would put booms in the river and a lot of people were involved with it. It'd be great to do it again, but I've never seen, I've never seen a summary report on it either.
Yes,
This one, I'd love to see it.
yeah, I can also look that up there.
Yeah,
I
I
know
can give you more information because I have it in my computer.
Perfect, yeah,
I'll send you what I'm asking for and then we can see if we can find it.
excellent. Quick access to our databases and I'll see what
I
I
can
can
give you
find.
name and times because I've got emails.
But
So,
but to your point, one of the items that we were when we received your letter, we had some discussions with my incident management division, who that they're kind of their central focus is marine environmental response, and so those are your actual responders that that would go out to oil spills, and I believe I noted a challenge here, but we have a close relationship with DEC. Actually, Josh Utberg is I know one of the main contacts that because we have just time distance speed issues with getting up here in a quick manner. As I mentioned, the challenges with the oil spills, but it is important for us to make those trips for these types so we can really bring a lot of people to the table. And when we were having these discussions, we have a tool that we use in preparedness called a government initiated unannounced exercise. Because there are some facilities that are Coast Guard regulated, actually, I think not too far from here. And
there's a location on the side of the river where they take oil.
yes,
And
I
they
think
drop
that's
it
one
off
of them.
there. Yeah, that's where the exercise was.
Perfect. Yeah, we could actually. So that was we I guess we could go about it in a few different ways that we'd be happy to chat about. But
Might just be good to see the reports and then go over it with us. And
Yes.
that would be very good to see because it was very confusing. It was the end of COVID and people
Mhm.
could get together, but couldn't get together, and I ended
Mhm.
up missing it, which really sucked. But I was in on the setup of it.
Yes.
How they're gonna do things and then it just kind of fell apart. I don't know what they're going to do.
Commander, are you recommending 2 meetings then, a 15 or 20-minute presentation and then one-on-ones? What are you recommending?
yes, I would say for the ACP and the area committee dialogue, that at least in the immediate, I think with maybe some follow-up one-on-ones or some I think on the exercise front, I'll see what I can find and regarding that tabletop exercise, but those are items that we absolutely can replicate. And
Pretty sure that was actually in the field. We put booms in the river and everything.
Mhm.
It wasn't just in a room like that.
yes,
So it was a little bigger than that.
I was like almost like a full scale
Yeah,
exercise.
it was a good exercise.
Mhm. No, that's but I would for the presentation, if the group would find it valuable, I was kind of maybe recommending a 15 and 20-minute presentation on I will give it the Coast Guard perspective of oil spill response, like going into actually the Oil Spill Alloway Trust Fund, how we use oil spill removal organizations, how we coordinate with DEC. They kind of going into what we do during tabletop exercises, but actually so you can kind of understand I would say the flow of show and then those unfortunate events, like what's happening, how are we responding, what's going on.
Thank you.
Are you familiar with Hudson River Safety Committee?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't think they get the information as well as they should. I mean, it was set up probably 5 years ago because of the barges. But the theory was that if anything goes on the river, the Hudson River Safety Committee should be notified of it so they can review the safety issues and then report back. And I don't think that's really happened.
Okay.
It'd be better to have more information, but it's a good group and there's a lot of good people in that group. And I think the Coast Guard's involved also. That
Yes, but I talked to, I know the,
Ian was the chairman.
is that also known as the HERSNA, or is that?
Yeah, it's the Hudson River. That's the,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Hudson River Safety Group is HERSNA, yeah.
I know that my counterpart, we call it, the Coast Guard Prevention Department Head, they do the inspections, and I know that they're very involved, and I've had some involvement on it, but that's, making sure that, yeah, they're aware of that response side or preparedness side.
Yeah, if you haven't been, you can touch base with them too,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm on that committee.
Mm-hmm.
And they get input from other people, you know, what's going on in the river, but presentation of different things going on with it is something we might be interested in.
Absolutely.
I'll send you that information too.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
No, well,
Thank you.
Can I ask just one clarifying question? So for the Hudson Seven, just one, with the drinking water source protection plan that they've created, one of the things that they want to do is update their own emergency response plan, breaching plans. And this, you know, obviously an exercise in terms of process. But can you just clarify how, other than the June meeting that we'll hear about, who do you need to hear from this group and when to inform the plan? I guess that we'll get a kind of primer on how it works, how the process works.
Yes.
But what, can you give us a sense of just like when and how they can participate? It's a little clear.
Yes, yeah, I was kind of letting it digest. I when I was mentioning kind of the 101, it would be as we kind of bring up different sections or have certain subcommittees, there would be certain chairs of that would be looking for a point of contact from the Hudson Seven to work with, and it's pretty detailed work, just going over plans and reviewing current material. So I will go back to ask the area committee kind of secretary to see what's that's why I was kind of suggesting that one-on-one approach is just, I would, if there is a point of contact, whether like a technical consultant or someone that would represent the Hudson Seven. Just because it would be a lot, because there just might be a lot of back and forth on different questions that come up and different sections. And just want to ensure that there's complete
In the exercise we did, that was done. People contacts were listed and all that good stuff, and we're supposedly contacted such. So that report I do have, and we'll see.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah.
So thank you, sir.
Oh, Gary, do you wanna, maybe it's next month, or maybe it's now, assemble a committee?
I think this time, we have a lot to go over and we've gotta be conscious of everybody's time as well, but we can have a discussion and we can formulate the communication and we can contact you, right?
Yes.
Unless it's the DWSP too.
Yeah, maybe when I follow up with what I got, and he gets to research what I've given him, then maybe there'll be more information to provide based on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Shellfront study.
Yep.
Paul, do you have a quick summary?
Yes, we're meeting with them on Monday. Finally, after 3.5 years, DEC and USGS have some preliminary ideas, and they want to know what our concerns are concerning the salt front, and how long the salt front will be here, what the concentrations will be in the future, so that we can plan to address those particular challenges.
That's May 19th at 2 p.m. Right. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Michael, DWSP 2.
Hey, so we are waiting on state review I will give you an update as soon as we have one. And we're just going to reach out to the subcommittee we're working with for details that we'd like to discuss on the May 29th event, just so we can make sure it doesn't conflict with anything in active review, but we're not concerned about anything. We should be good to discuss the plan in detail to some extent on the 29th.
Okay, yeah, that's important that we know what we can say and what we can't say if it's not adopted.
Exactly. I'll make sure to work closely with you to figure that out.
All right, thank you. Rebecca, water treatment plant.
So the free Hudson 7 operator training that's gonna be run by Dottie and Randy is happening, which is really exciting. On the 29th of May from 8 AM to noon. And we sent around a RSVP, a little Google Doc for water treatment plants for their staff to sign up if they can come. It's 4 credit hours. And it can host up to 25 water operators who are those of interest. And we're up to 11 people right now, 11 staff, and I assume it's gonna probably be right full. But I'm trying to encourage water treatment plants to get their operators to sign by tomorrow. We can get a list, or we'll extend it, but that's sort of the deadline. I'll remind you. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Are there any updates, Paul, on the Lower Esopus?
Before Paul jumps in, I just want to know you all to know that Amanda Laval, who's here, has offered a meeting, 30 minutes on the 19th between 9 and 11. It's a Monday for you and Paul.
Oh, okay.
So Paul is available. These were dates and times that he had. Amanda's available. When can I schedule you?
Talk to me tomorrow and I'll look at my calendar.
All right, and I'll confirm it for you all. All right? Good.
Okay, the purpose of that meeting is to coordinate Hudson 7 efforts with the county. It seems like we've been kind of going off in 2 directions, and we want to make sure that we're supporting the county and the county supporting us. So we want to know their agenda and goals and share them with us. And thanks to to Rebecca. She's been working at this for 2 months to schedule a meeting, so she's done a great job in doing that. Concerning the supplemental EIS, which we responded to over 4 years ago, well, just 4 years ago, no work has really been done on that. They haven't. DEC has started to make some preliminary plans, and one of the major things is how the lower Esopus affects the Hudson 7. So that's one of the points that New York City has to address. But they haven't put it in their budget yet. So I don't know. I would say it would take 5 or 10 years before the supplemental EIS is completed, which is just totally unacceptable to me. And on the flood study, there's going to be another 1.5 year delay. So that's another project that's going to be delayed for maybe 5 or 6 years. So it's just one really big delay. The next thing is the Hudson Valley Flood Resilience Network. I just signed up for it as I just wanted to become a member, and they immediately came back to me and said, the Hudson 7 could be a partner community. And so Gary and I talked about, what would be our obligations. And really their main purpose is to provide education, technical assistance, and bring local governments together that are working on flood resilience in a supportive environment to support peer learning. So I think it's a worthwhile organization, but Gary wanted to make sure that the Hudson 7 was on board with us being a partner. There's no fee to join. There's no voting. It's just, as a lot of people probably know, Hudson 7 has a good reputation and people want us to work with them. So that's that. The other thing is I went to a flood managers workshop in the end of April. And although a lot of funds are being reduced from a federal level, the Environmental Bond Issue Act is going to provide $4.2 billion for projects. 1.5 billion is low for climate, and 1.1 is for flood mitigation. One of the things I learned was that for every dollar you spend on mitigation, you save $13 for reconstruction and recovery. And the last couple of years, United States has spent $40 billion in recovery, and it just is not sustainable. So the applications for the environmental bond issue are due on June 6th, 2025. So it's a good opportunity for communities to apply for that money. That's it.
Thanks, Paul.
Does anybody have a problem with Hudson 7 joining as a community member? I think as we peel back the onion on this, as Paul said, there's a lot of good networking that can happen as a result of this. So everybody's in favor of, and Paul can be our rep on the committee and bring a lot of information back for us. Sure. So I think, Paul, we're good to go.
Great.
How's that?
That sounds good to me.
All right. Rebecca, let's talk about 29th quickly, as best we can.
I put together a memo just so everybody could see what the plans were. Anybody have any questions about that memo?
Is everybody here planning on attending?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody here not planning on attending? How's that question?
You're bringing all your friends.
Yeah, bring all your friends.
All the municipalities and the councils, the boards, the trustees were all invited. And the response was great. And state, federal reps. So it'll be.
The governor's office.
And the governor's office.
As was the first to respond.
Yeah. So it should be great. I went down to the boathouse tonight to walk through it and make sure that the presentation, everything is there for us and where the food will go. So we're all good, ready to go. So we're dealt with parking and stuff. And Riverkeeper.
Yeah, I was up to that. I'd like to send a thank you to Riverkeeper and Dan for really stepping up for us to cover our cost of food and
insurance.
Roll, the insurance.
Yeah.
We need.
We can list Marist as additionally insured.
Just don't fall.
No, happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Huge enthusiast for us.
Yeah. Because running through a municipal council just wasn't enough time to make that happen. So I really, really, really appreciate Riverkeeper.
Yeah. I came at a very good time near the end of our fiscal year when I was slacking my budget.
Yeah. And so Riverkeeper is taking care of catering for the event, but also great sandwiches for all the water operators following the training. So from Rossi's, come on, that's great. That was, we've been taking, I'll take the training. Yeah, exactly. So that's.
I mean, there's 2.5 years of a committee and a lot of people working on the DWSP two here.
Yeah.
And we really, the goal was to hopefully have state approval, which I don't think we're gonna have by then, but just the fact to moralize that and was gonna set our framework for the years to come.
On our 7th anniversary.
Yeah, now on our 7th anniversary.
Which is why we're.
Of the Hudson 7. Right, so.
It's really 8 years that we've been out there.
It's just a great event, so I hope everybody can attend and bring your friends, bring your kids.
Great, and then I'm sorry. Did you have something?
No, go ahead.
No. Ready to go.
Council meeting logistics, a discussion on remote attendance and quorum considerations. So there was something that Elizabeth Spinzia raised for the council, whether or not the council needs to be in person to meet their quorum, given the council is an advisory body, and how the council felt about that. In other words, could we meet our quorum online. So that's the discussion. And then the vote, do you want to make?
And I'll give you my personal opinion. It's great to have everybody here. Because the best way to get information is to be physically here. Zoom is great. We appreciate everybody on Zoom. I'm not trying to ignore you, but having everybody in the room to me and to have a quorum and council representatives, we're trying to move forward to remember a 501c3 is an important aspect of how we work. So my vote is we have a quorum here, but I'm open to somebody saying you can't.
So I feel strongly on the different footing of that. I feel like one of the reasons our agenda is so long tonight is because we had to cancel last month because we weren't able to get a quorum. That's not the first time this has happened, and usually the quorum that we do have is the same few folks, which I appreciate everyone in this room for coming every month. But I really think, I know I'm still gonna be here in person as much as possible, but having that flexibility will allow us to really chip away. So I would love for us to open the forum up.
I'm in favor of being able to attend the room. So.
I'm an advisor.
I know.
So.
I'll still be here running it by Zoom anyway, so.
All right, I make a motion that we can resolve our meeting by only first be in attendance, but also in quorum.
Second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. So done. So we'll operate, but please. Where else can you get the same? That's a beautiful.
Yes,
Okay.
so I'm sorry, so it can be either, in other words.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Great, so you know that. Finally, Devin Regalino has offered to be the new REMAC appointment. Emily Svensson had served in that role for many years and actually helped to create that seat for the Hudson 7. Hudson 7 will make a nomination for Devin, and then we submit it in the fall for consideration.
I just want to say, I know that Emily, helped fight to get Hudson 7 a seat. I just offered my name because I want us to be able to secure that. I don't want us to see it go away. But if anybody else is interested, they can step in. I just don't want to see us success.
I'm sorry, REMAC, Dan, can you share what that means for everyone?
Hudson River Estuary Management Advisory, so it's authorized by state legislation to advise the estuary program, which we're familiar with from the grant programs, among other things that come out of it. And also that committee has a directive to advise the DEC commissioner on matters of importance to. So the committee does occasionally write letters directly to the DEC commissioner, so that having that direct line to high authority is nothing to smooth that. So there's and it's good information sharing for.
Need to vote?
Yeah.
I make a motion to have Devin represent us at.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Devin. All right, you're gonna make a motion to adjourn. 6:32, sorry to keep you so long.
Thanks,
I
everybody.
usually try to be as prompt, but
Good night.